5. So this is the fifth module, the fifth video also for this course. And in this module, we'll be looking at the do's and don'ts in fine arts. So when we are talking about do's and don'ts in fine arts, this actually implies, just as the name implies, it has to do with the necessary things, what you are as an artist, what you should do, and what you should never do as an artist in fine art. So this is just like ethical guideline and principles that needs to be met and that needs to be considered and put into consideration when you are as an artist, as a professional artist. So that is what mainly what we'll be looking at in this module. The do's and don'ts. Just like the yes, they do. Let's just make it simple. The do's and don'ts in fine arts. What you should do as an artist and what you should never do as an artist. That's what we'll be looking at in this module. In our previous modules, we have mainly discussed major topics that revolves around fine arts and artists, and we have traced the historical development of fine arts through different era and the likes. We have also introduced ourselves to how to draw basic drawing techniques. Then we have also looked at the intermediate, advanced drawing techniques and all. So this is just like a step further in this course fine arts. So we'll be looking at the do's and don'ts in this module now. Let's move on to the contents of the module, where we have mainly first subtopic that I'll be looking at is the do's and don'ts in fine arts. So after that, when we are done with the do's and don'ts in fine arts, we'll move on to the general don'ts in fine arts. The general don'ts in fine arts, the general do's and don'ts in fine arts. Then after that, we also look at studio safety and material handling do's and don'ts. So if we look at this, we actually categorize these do's and don'ts based on different perspectives and different contexts. Now, when you are in studio, the do's and don'ts, what you should do and what you should not do when you are at studio as an artist, so which has to do with studio, the safety in studio. We will also look at the common technical mistakes and how to avoid them. That is the do's and don'ts when we are talking about professionalism. Also, mistake that you should do as an artist and that you should not do, that you can do and that you cannot do. Now we'll also move on to the best practice for composition, proportion and authenticity. I believe we have talked about composition and proportion in the previous modules, I think module 2. Now we'll be looking at the best practices for that. After that, we will look at the ethical do's and don'ts. When we are talking about the ethics, talking about originality, plagiarism, respect for subjects and all. This one has to do with it is also professionalism, what you can do as an artist. Then preservation and presentation of artwork. How can we preserve and present artwork? These are the subtopics under this module 5, the do's and don'ts in fine art. Now let's move on to the introduction. Let's introduce ourselves to this. I believe we have been able to introduce ourselves to the fact that do's and don'ts in fine art is literally what's the necessary, the rule, just like the rules and regulation that is governing an artist, what is expected from an artist, what you can do as an artist, a professional artist, and what you cannot do as be the fact that you are an artist or a designer. So far you are engaging in anything that has to do with professionally, what you can do and what you cannot do. Now let's pick the do's in fine art, the general do's in fine art, for instance. So I believe we know what general do's means. It implies that generally what you can do as an artist or as a designer. One, we have do practice consistently. You have to practice as a even if you are a professional artist, if you don't practice, then your art will definitely leave you if care is not taken. So you have to practice consistently every day, even if it is just for 15 to 30 minutes of sketching, doodling, mark making, or quick studies, anything. Just make sure you practice something every day. Then these are the necessary do's that you should be doing generally as an artist. And the second one is you do master the core foundational before chasing advanced techniques or personal style. That's another do's as an artist. Then the third one is do work from live and quality reference as much as possible. Try to make sure that you are as an artist, you work from live and quality reference. This will help you to aid your work and help your work generally. So now we have the fourth one is that to do experiments boldly once fundamentals are solid, trying different mediums like oil, acrylic, watercolor, charcoal, clay, and the likes. So trying different medium techniques, styles and approaches. So just try to experiment boldly, try different kind of things. Even what you don't know, just try to do it. And if you do that consistently, before you know you are a professional, or that you become professional more at a particular style or techniques. Now the fifth one that we have here is that do study the masters and other artists thoughtfully. Just make sure you pick one role model as one artist as your role model and study such person thoughtfully. And by doing this, you are definitely upgrading yourself. You analyze works by inspiring figures for their use of composition, the color, light, or technique, but make sure you also focus on understanding why they do it and how, rather than just blind copying them. Make sure you try to find reason in what you are you are to study the master. Don't just study the masters for studying sake alone, for the sake of copying, but try to dig more to know why and how they actually do it. Why did this master, why did this also person use this color, why did they use this like this? Try to understand their perspective and what they are passing across. Then the sixth one, for the general do's in finance, we have you embrace integration, reflection, and persistence. That is, you have to keep all your work, even your failures, to track progress, to show what you have been doing progressively. Now, the general don'ts in finance. Now we have one: you don't skip preparation or rush into a piece without planning. Everything in this life has to do with proper planning. So jumping straight in without priming surfaces properly, organizing your palette, selecting a limited color scheme, sketching thumbnails for composition, or mapping values, it often results in poor adhesion, unbalanced design, muddy mixes, or constant correction and mid process. And I believe you don't want to go through this stress and hectic stuff. Now, if you don't want to, as an artist, if you don't want to do that, you have to make sure you do not skip preparation or rush into a piece without planning properly. Take your time to plan, because everything that is well planned results have a good result and positive results. Now the second one, when we are still under the don'ts in finance, we have don't overblend your work or smudge excessively. Well, particularly in graphite, charcoal, or early painting layers. While smooth transition appeal to some, relentless blending flattens forms, erases texture, it gives edge, variety, and also creates a dull, lifeless, or overly polished looks. The third one here is that don't rely heavily on tentative outlines, multiple sketchy lines, or pure contour first in representational work. Now let's move on to the studio safety and material handling, do's and don'ts. When we are talking about maintaining a safe studio is another thing entirely when we are talking about art. Because you have to, if you don't maintain studio, it is something that it will result to what you don't like. Now, to maintain a safe studio environment and handling materials properly, it is very crucial to prevent health risk, to prevent accidents and damage to artwork. What you have been doing, imagine that you have been working on a particular project for days, and because you are not keeping everything clean, something just splashed on your work and scattered everything, or you just squeeze all of a sudden, it will definitely damage artwork. So if studio is not well maintained and taken care of. Now, fine art materials often involve chemicals, just like I was trying to say, sharp tools and physical hazard. So prioritizing safety, it ensures longevity in your practice. So make sure that everything is safe, properly arranged, everywhere is neat. What needs to be covered is covered, to avoid unnecessary inhaling of chemicals, you understand, which might jeopardize and affect our health. Now, moving on to do's and don'ts in studio safety and material handling. The do's, we have do ventilate your space adequately. Make sure there is proper ventilation. Work in a well ventilated area using exhaust fans, open windows, or fume hoods when handling solvents, aerosols, paints, or resins. Now that's very important. Make sure there is ventilation, there is room for ventilation where you are working. Don't just suffocate yourself. Now the second one is that do wear appropriate personal protective equipment. You use gloves, safety goggles for mixing or handling, dust mask or respirators for particulates, and aprons to protect your clothing. These are necessary things that you should do in the studio. Now the don'ts, when we are talking about studio safety and material handling, what you should not do: don't ever eat in the studio, drink or smoke in the studio. It is very, very bad and wrong. Don't ever eat or drink in the studio. And don't mix incompatible materials without knowledge. For instance, avoid combining ammonia-based cleaners with bleach, or using water on oil-based spills, as this can create hazardous fumes or reaction that you might not like as an artist. Now let's move on to the next subtopic, which is the common technical mistakes and how to avoid them. Technical errors are inevitable in learning fine art, but it can actually be mitigated through awareness and deliberate practice. So these mistakes often stem from haste, when you are trying to rush yourself, lack of fundamentals, or poor habits, leading to subpar results. Now, the mistakes we are going to look at here is inaccurate proportion and distortion. This actually do occur when artists eyeball measurements without tools, without using the proper tools to measure. It's used to result in elongated figures or skewed perspective. Now, how to avoid this is to use sightening techniques. Hold the pencil at arm's length to measure angles, ratios, and alignments. Employ grids, calipers, or plumb lines for precision. You start with basic shapes. For instance, we have blocking in ovals for hairs and refine iterate leaving. Another mistake that is common in technically, is muddy colors from overmixing or poor palette management. So color they actually lose vibrancy when too many are blended on the palette or canvas, creating grace. So which can actually jeopardize the work that you have been doing for a long time. And how do we avoid this as an artist? To avoid this, you have to limit your palette to 3 to 6 colors plus white or black. You mix small amounts, clean brushes between dips, and use glazing so for depth. So this is actually the best way for you to avoid this. So these are the common technical mistakes and how to avoid them in fine art. Now let's move on to the next subtopic, which is best practices for composition, proportion, and authenticity. Strong composition draws viewers in actually, so accurate proportion ensure believability also, and authenticity infuses work with personal truth. So these are the 3 functions of this this subtopic: practices for composition, proportion, and authenticity. So these elements actually elevate art from technical exercise to expressive statements. Let's take composition best practices now. A composition best practice is the arrangement of elements to guide the eye and evoke emotion. Use the rule of thirds place key subjects at grid intersection for balance. This is the best way for composition. Now, proportion best practices, sorry. To achieve this, in doing this you achieve realism. You can achieve realism through measurements. You divide subject into ratios. For instance, human head is 1/8 body height. You use comparative measuring, compare width to height. In perspective, apply vanishing points and horizon lines. Now, these are the proportion best practices, how you can actually practice your proportion very well. Now, authenticity best practices. Now, you root work in genuine inspiration. Draw from personal experiences, emotions, or observation rather than trend. Don't just drop anyhow on what is trending. Experiment with styles, but evolve your voice through consistency. Now we move on to the next subtopic, which is the ethical do's and don'ts. That is, which has to do with originality, plagiarism. I believe we know what plagiarism is when we are talking in the professional field. Respect for subjects. Now, ethics in fine art, it uphold integrity, respect cultural context, and foster trust in the creative community. They actually guide decisions on originality, sourcing, and representation. What you should do in this area is to, one, you do prioritize originality, develop ideas from your observation, from your sketches or concepts, and you actually try to transform references through personal interpretation. For instance, e.g., we have altering composition or adding unique elements to create fresh works. This is a good example about prioritizing originality. The second do's under these ethical do's and don'ts, what you should do is that you credit sources and seek permissions. If the work is not actually yours and you want to use it, you credit them and seek permission. If using photos or ideas from others, attribute them in description on titles. For live subjects, obtain model releases for cultural motifs, research and honor origin. Just make sure that you honor origins, make references so that people will actually know that this person is just, creativity is not like you are creating something that has never been happened before, that has never existed. Creativity has to do with bringing out something new from what we already have. So that's now what creativity is. So now if you want to be creative, you have to also make sure that you give honor to who honor is. If you are actually working using picture of someone's work, you reference that person, you seek permission and credit the sources. Now the don'ts concerning the ethical issues, when we are talking about ethical don'ts in fine art, one is that you don't exploit subjects. Make sure you refrain from invasive photography or depiction that harm privacy or dignity. For instance, unauthorized news and sensationalized trauma. So you make sure you avoid this. Don't plagiarize or copy verbatim. So replicating another person's work without transformation is unethical and illegal under copyright. Even fine art should credit originals. This is to show you how important this is. Now, preservation and presentation of artwork. How can you preserve and present artwork now? Proper preservation extends artwork's life. When you provide, it's just like when you properly preserve a food, it will definitely extend the life of the food and makes you the longevity and the duration. Now, while the same thing applicable to fine art, when fine art is properly preserved, it's actually artwork is properly preserved, it actually extend the life of such artwork. While effective presentation enhances in its impact and value. When you and on the other hand, when you present your work effectively, it will show and depict or enhances the impact of your artwork and value of the artwork. So these practices are essential for storage, display, and sales. That's to do with how you save, how you store your artwork, how you display it, and how you sell them. Now, preservation best practices. Now, you protect from light. Make sure you protect your artwork from light, humidity, temperature fluctuations, and pests. You use acid-free mats, archival papers, and UV protective glass for framing. So these are different ways that you can preserve your art. You store flat in portfolios or rolled in tubes for large works. Avoid stacking to prevent smudges. Now, for painting, on the other hand, varnish once fully dry to shield from dust. Digitize pieces for records and handle with clean hands or gloves. Now, common pitfalls to avoid is that you don't expose to direct sunlight. Don't expose your artwork to direct sunlight. It will definitely fade the color, or damp areas. Now, avoid cheap frames that off gas acids, damaging paper. Never use tape on originals, rather opt for hinges. Now, in conclusion, the do's and don'ts of fine arts are not just isolated studio habits, but it is a holistic philosophy that finds its fullest expression in printing, a medium that demands precision, foresight, and respect for multiplicity, while rewarding the disciplined pursuit of quality and originality. Now, by embracing these do's and don'ts, these do's and rigorously avoiding the don'ts, artists can be able to transform printing from a mere technical process into a powerful democratizing force, one that extends the reach of their vision without diluting its essence. So this is